And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That's right, you stumbled onto Coffee Talk. And you can find me on YouTube for the live portion at Coffee Talk Live or at Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting on both channels Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat. If you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can join me there. I can post things there that I can't put here. So I'll get in trouble with ScrewTube. I'm already in enough trouble with ScrewTube. Thank you. As well as Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Being joined today by Miss Kitty. Miss Kitty is actually in the chair back there, for those of you who can see, taking a nap. Dusty's in the room also, but she's laying on the floor, grooming herself. One of many cats we are sheltering and taking care of and working towards getting rehomed. Some of them. I don't think Miss Kitty's going anywhere anytime soon. And of course, for those of you who are listening and not able to see, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable so that you can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and I'll greet some of the people that have chimed in thus far. I see Helter is here. Donna Beaver is here, reminding people thumbs up, like, and share. Yes, please do if you don't mind. Every little bit helps. I'll take all the help I can get as far as YouTube is concerned. See, Brian is here, who says they're sorry they missed the stream. They had to go to the DMV yesterday. Actually, we might be talking about the DMV here in a minute. I got a story on them as we dive into what's going on in the world today. Dragon is here. Urban Angst. Boogers is here. H12 is here. Monkey is here. Says he got his 2024 Kia K5 maintenance with the warranty and she's running smoothly. I would hope so, as new as it is, 2024 Kia. I would hope it would be running very smoothly. If you're having trouble already, you made the wrong choice. And Doc Galt is here. H12 says you are whistling. Does anybody hear a whistling sound in the background? Is there some kind of a weird noise? I can't tell from this end, obviously. Oh, Monkey said he meant to say 2023 at 13,000 miles. Well, I would still hope it would be working well. And Doc says there is a whistling sound. I don't know what that could be. Again, I can't hear anything on this end. And it's the same microphone setup. I don't know what's causing the noise. Yeah, Urban says something is going on too. Very faint. All right. Well, hopefully that'll dissipate. I don't know what the issue could be, and I can't adjust it now. Kind of stuck with it. But we're going to go ahead and jump to Chicago. And this is a local article, Chicago Sun-Times, if it ever pops up. What is this? I don't want to see all that. Trying to dump ads on me here. All right. Chicago Board of Education votes to remove the police from schools. Does that sound like a good idea? Says CPS in a separate vote opted to drop janitorial giant Aramark as the district's cleaning provider also, which is not as big of a story but ties in. Dozens of Chicago students gathered outside the Board of Education president's house in the summer of 2020, calling on the school board to end its contract with the Chicago Police Department that day. In a close and controversial vote, the board opted to keep police in schools. Don't these kids have anything better to do? Why are dozens of students gathering outside the Board of Education president's home, trying to get them to remove police security from their schools? That, I can't stand student activists. 4 years later, some of those same kids have since graduated from Chicago public schools, but were back at the district's downtown headquarters celebrating what they viewed as a mission accomplished. The Board of Education voted Thursday to remove dozens of uniformed police officers from 39 high schools that still have them, and in a separate vote to drop janitorial giant Aramark as the district's cleaning provider. The two unanimous votes by Mayor Brandon Johnson's 7-member hand-picked school board realized two of his campaign promises and notched significant wins for education activists who have long demanded police-free schools and an end to privatized custodial services. Why do they want to remove the police from their schools? Standing among student organizers before the board meeting Thursday, Essence Jage Gatherite said she didn't expect a repeat of the dramatic 4-3 vote 4 years ago when she was a junior in high school, but she wanted to show up to make sure resources wouldn't be redirected for policing alternatives. The board's resolution called on CPS to end the school resource officer program by the start of next school year and instead create a policy that focuses on holistic approach to student safety and, quote, address root causes and contributing factors for disparities in student discipline. The priority should be to help students heal from trauma, address situations through restorative justice, and re-engage kids who are growing uninterested with school. They were uninterested in school when I was in school. In the 70s and 80s, we didn't want to go. Whoever wanted to go to school? Okay, so let me see. Let me see if I get this straight. I'm gonna throw my thought process into here. And they quoted it here, a holistic approach to student safety and addressing root causes and contributing factors for disparities in student discipline, and to help students heal from trauma, address situation through restorative justice, and re-engage kids. Isn't that what put you in a position that needed or required for you to infuse police into your schools in the first place? All this anti-bullying bullshit and other analogy programs that you came up with over the years in the last 20 plus years or so, isn't that what put you in a position where violence in the school, whether it's fights or other things or shooting or stabbing incidences, got so out of control that you needed police in the first place? Now you vote to remove the police and double down on the programs that caused the problem in the first place, or that contributed to them, added to the problem. I can't say it's the root cause, because a lot of that modern approach, anti-bullying, progressive crap is what led to where we are now. When I was growing up, there was no school shootings. You never heard anything like that. Never heard anything like that. Never had a shooting incidences, heard about kids getting murdered in schools. Kids afraid to go. Well, there were kids that were afraid to go to school. Typically kids that were getting bullied. But bullying was managed by pulling kids apart, not with warning cards and counseling memberships. And the more wishy-washy these programs got, the worse the bullying got. And then you get to the point where you needed police in the schools. Man Animal says he doesn't hear any noise. And Doc says it's about control so these kids can act like fools. And MGTOW Cowboy is there, says hello, cheers from Chicago. Oh, there you go. Teacher, leave those kids alone. Yeah, this is right up your alley then. Doc says they'll blame the police when they're not there and someone gets killed. Yeah, exactly. And Monkey says they remember a video from Vice about a school in Chicago that took in kids that were troublemakers or court-ordered to go to school. It's since been shut down. The video's called Last Chance High. Yeah, and I worked briefly with a school like that in Topeka. It was um, Capital City High School, Cap City, they called it. And that's where all the real badass kids were sent. They were court ordered to go there, and they were all minimalistically transported. That is, everybody was on the short bus so that they wouldn't mix with other groups of high school kids. And they had police and heavy police and security there. They had safe rooms. And by safe room, I mean if you were acting up, they would lock you in there. So yeah, and they had like a principal told me, the principal of that school said that as far as like graduation and success after graduation, they had essentially a 99% failure rate at that school. Off the record. Off the record. Doc says we have a state and county police in the schools here in Indiana, and they are great. In today's day and age, with the collapse of family structure, with the death of the nuclear family, with the lack of discipline, with a disengagement between parents and children, and with the socio-political programming that goes on in schools, unfortunately, you need a police presence, and this is going to lead to disaster somewhere down the line. As for their other policy, they're discharging Aramark. If I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Aramark, as their cleaning solutions for the janitorial service. And they are expensive. And when you outsource school buses, janitorial, kitchen staff, anything like that, it's more expensive. But typically, the reason why a lot of these agencies like public school outsource that way is to separate themselves from liability. So if you got an Aramark janitor and he does something stupid, you can blame Aramark. It's not on the school. If he works directly for the school and cuts up, then you can sue the school. You see the problem? That's why they ended up doing a lot of that. That's why most school districts, they have two bus services. The one that's actually run by the public school district that only accounts for usually less than 10% of the school bus service. And then the ones who actually deliver the majority of the kids, which is a contracted service like Laidlaw or Durham or somebody like that. And again, that's why they have outsourced janitorial, outsourced school lunch program, whatever. They want to bring people in and have them do it so that if anything goes wrong, they can blame them. So I don't know how that's going to work out. Maybe if Cruising is in here, he can elaborate on this. Or actually, here is Cruising. It says they outsourced our substitutes here, and that's why it's basically come down to. Substitutes were cussing out misbehaving kids, and the district couldn't or didn't want to keep litigating with parents. Yeah, there you go. That kind of is where the connection I'm kind of making there. But yeah, we'll see how this works out for Chicago. And of course, the students are going to get behind it, and activists are going to drag these kids into it because they're dumb and impressionable, and they don't realize that they're in a situation where, yeah, you know what? You kind of need. Where are you going? Sorry, cat behind me. You kind of need a police presence to keep the levels down at this point, especially in high school. Now we're going to jump to Georgia. Jump to Georgia. One more comment here. Doc says the nearest school uses a contract service called Lawman. They contract off-duty police officers. Yeah, there you go. So we're going to jump to Georgia, and we're talking about the DMV. This had come up earlier because Brian mentioned he had to go to the DMV yesterday, which can be tedious. And this is a local story. You're probably not going to hear this elsewhere. WRDW, Georgia. And the title reads, if it'll hold still, Republicans seek to stop, automatic voter registration in state. Georgia's automatic voter registration has put almost all eligible citizens on the rolls, but now some Republicans want to turn that system off. And I agree with that, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The Senate Ethics Committee on Thursday voted to advance Senate Bill 221, which would require people to opt in to voter registration when they receive or renew a driver's license. Currently, they're automatically registered unless they opt out. The bill also makes it easier for voters to be challenged based on where they live, possibly clearing the way for Republican activists who see the state's voting list as bloated and fraudulent to knock thousands of additional voters off the rolls. The measure is moving forward as Georgia is expected to again be a competitive state in this year's presidential election, and a GOP grassroots activist continues to support Trump's discredited claims that his 2020 Georgia loss stemmed from fraud, suspected fraud. A 2023 study by the Center for Election Innovation and Research found the share of active registered voters rose to 98% of the voting eligible population in 2020 from 78% in 2016 when the state began registering people at driver's license offices unless they specifically decline. Now, here's the problem. They don't tell you that you're being automatically registered. If you move to Georgia or you're getting your license for the first time or whatever the situation is, you're renewing a license that's really old, there is nothing that tells you, at least nothing that's obvious. Let's put it that way. It might be in fine print somewhere that tells you you're being registered to vote. Okay. And if you are registered to vote, they will take that information, the DMV, and sell it. So you end up on other lists that you want nothing to do with. Okay. Secondly, it says unless you opt out. My wife is a victim of this because she was registered to vote without her knowledge of or consent under this law. And she doesn't want to be involved. I don't want to vote. I don't believe in that system anymore. I want to opt out. She tried for months to opt out unsuccessfully and is still registered because she just kind of gave up after a while, after a few months rolled on. And she goes to the DMV and they're like, oh, you can't go here. You have to go to this one. And she goes out to that DMV and they're like, no, this isn't the one. You got to go here. You got to call this office. You got to do this. You got to fill out that paperwork. You have to go online and do this. And they basically bullshitted her around for months until she gave up because she wasn't getting anywhere with it. So you're locked into that garbage. All right. If you don't want to be on it, you're forced on, and they do everything possible to keep you there. Plus, it is bloated because I'm willing to bet if people die, if people move out of state, whatever, that they're still on that list. I'm willing to bet. Cruising says after Parkland in 2014, every school in Florida has a sheriff stationed in the school. It's by law and doesn't allow for subcontracting. And Urban says, will undocumented migrants also be automatically registered and their paperwork signed with an X for the illiterate ones? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't be surprised if a glitch in the system allowed for it. And they're probably registered and don't even know it. Don't even know what that is. But it's a shady system to do that by default without people realizing it's even happening. And so I'm for this. For them, at least asking you when you go and you get your license or you renew it or upgrade your license or whatever, hey, do you want to register? They ask you if you want to be an organ donor. Okay. They don't just automatically make you an organ donor. How would people feel about that? What do you mean I'm an organ donor? And it's against your personal ethics or against your religion to do so. You see what I'm saying? It's really not, it's not kosher. It really is not kosher. I could take a moment here, a moment of silence for dear old, sweet old, lovable old, reliable old, trustworthy old, transparent old Uncle Joe. No, don't get your hopes up. He's still alive. But he's getting hammered in the media. Daily Mail article: Biden is plotting tough new immigration crackdowns, almost identical to the ones Democrats previously blasted Trump for. The border will close if more than 8,500 try to cross in a day. That's still way too many. Since prior to this, it would be like 400 in a day, something like that. Now it's thousands. President Joe Biden is considering an immigration crackdown that closes the border if more than 8,500 try to cross in a day, a law repeatedly used by former President Trump. The law would, if the migrant crisis reached those numbers per day, unilaterally enact a sweeping ban at the southern border, according to 3 people familiar with deliberations. The administration stymied by lawmakers who rejected a negotiated border bill earlier this month. That bill was you already know what that is. That is no border bill. That was a flim flam to give the Ukraine $68 billion. Has been exploring options that Biden could deploy on his own without congressional approval. He knows what to do. He just doesn't want to do it. The immigration authority the administration has been looking into is outlined in Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which gives a president broad leeway to block entry of certain immigrants into the United States if it would be detrimental to the national interest of the United States. You mean all those special interest, thousands upon thousands of special interest, quote, migrants who have been crossing the border for the last 3 years? The ones that have links to terrorism that we let in anyway, the ones that come from hostile nations that were previously banned that we let in anyway? You mean those kind of people? How about all those thousands upon thousands of Chinese migrants that are pouring across the border now? What about that? Biden rescinded that ban on his first day in office, through executive order after Democrats were enraged and blasted Trump over the policy. But now how Biden would deploy that power to deal with his own immigration challenges is currently being considered, and it could be used in a variety of ways, according to the people familiar with discussions. Yeah, basically, the election's coming up. Biden realized that the open door border policy is a disaster, or his handlers figured it out. They want to run him again because he's a good puppet, and they want to pretend to fix it. Create a problem, fix it, act like you're a hero. That's how it works. Yep, and there's Gary Edwards. He says he's late. That's 2 demerits, Gary. No, it's all right, Gary. I'm glad you could make it. Doc says their dad had been dead for a couple of years and he still gets political stuff in the mail during elections. So that makes sense about information being sold. Yeah. That's where they get your name for all of those cards, which I've gotten in trouble for showing on YouTube, by the way, as if it doesn't happen. We don't get tons of like political BS mail, or my wife does. I don't. And Spectre is here. Glad you could make it, as well as Velvet Pilot. Thanks for joining us today. Helter says that's what people don't seem to grasp. It's a controlled demolition. Doesn't matter which party is in office, the demolition continues. Yeah. So he did this. He was told, yeah, sign this paper. He signed it. The border was flung open. They started pouring in 10 times the amount that we normally get. Now the whole country is in a crisis. And he's sitting there scratching his balls and saying, "Oh, gee, I guess I'll have to close the border now, or put some kind of restrictions up and put on a show for the American people." So, because most of them are too stupid to realize that they've been flim-flammed anyways. And granted, as I'm always saying, most people are not that smart. They're not. And politicians and activists and people in the media are experts at taking advantage of that. And I see Puck is here, mispronouncing it on purpose, by the way. Phuck wants people to hit the thumbs up. Yes, please do if you don't mind. Nature Nerd says America Uncovered made a video about how thousands are crossing the Canadian border because Canada allows Mexicans without a visa, into Vermont and New York. Yeah, the northern border is also compromised. That's come up in discussions a few times. The northern border is compromised. It's not as bad as the southern border because most of the people crossing it don't like the cold. Anyway, Dragon says, I'm not sure what disappoints the more, the fact that he created and let the mess continue for 3 years, or the fact he's only attempting to correct this to salvage his re-election chances. Damage is done. Yeah. And that's all it is. And it's pretty obvious. It should be obvious to most people what this is. It should be. But as I've said a million times, most people are not that smart. They're not that smart. And not only that, Dusty, she's not going to let you in that chair, honey. You see, for those of you who can see Dusty trying to get into her spot, but Miss Kitty's in it, and that is not a fight that she wants to have. Come on down, Dusty. Thank you. And then Puck says, while this is happening, Biden will sign up for the WHO pandemic treaty. That's coming up soon. Ugh, please. What a disaster. As we shift gears here, we're going to shift gears here. And this is, who is this? This is the mayor of DC, right? Muriel Bowser, Muriel Bowser, mayor of DC. We're going to talk about really quickly here because I have some points to make about this that'll tie in with the article. Democratic mayor hands out $10,800 for economic equity program that funds lavish 5-day trip to Miami. Oh, okay. And I'm going to tell you where I'm going to tie this in. It says Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, yeah, okay, I was right, distributed thousands of dollars to low-income moms with no strings attached as part of an, quote, equitable economic recovery strategy to offset the costs of childcare. In at least one case, the taxpayer dollars were used to fund a lavish trip to Miami. You want to offer, this is where it's already a problem, and how these lawmakers are so hopelessly detached from reality. Mayor Muriel Bowser, it never occurred to her that if you want to offset the cost of childcare, they already have free childcare programs for low-income families anyway. They get free childcare already. They're not paying for childcare. So why are you giving them money? Your, quote, equitable economic recovery strategy program. Back to the article. The direct cash payments were part of a pilot program to determine whether the flush of cash could demonstrate economic improvements among participants. Additional cash has allowed women to achieve further stability, financial security, food security, God, I'm sick of that term, and health insurance coverage, Bowser's office had claimed. Point again, if you're talking about low-income people, all right, food security, health insurance coverage, they get food stamps and they get free health care. What are you doing with this tax money? But an economic policy expert told Fox News Digital the policies were a misdirection of funds that should otherwise be used for public safety and education. All 132 mothers who participated in the program were able to choose whether to receive a monthly payment of $900 or to get $10,800 in one lump sum, which was a unique feature of the DC pilot. And there's your mayor, Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser. There she is. Wow. Matriarchy, I got to tell you. Quote, quite often these handouts actually trap people in a cycle of poverty. Joel Griffith, an economic research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, told Fox News. This is not helping people build long term wealth and to have long term economic prosperity. One recipient, Can Kenethia Miller, told the Post that she took the money and spent most of it on a lavish trip to Miami. Some of it I just left alone. The other side is I wanted to blow it and I wanted to have fun, Miller said. My kids got to experience something I would have never been able to do if I didn't have money or that money. Miller blew it on a 5-day, $6,000 trip to Miami, including a boat tour. In what she called a rare moment of self indulgence, Miller spent $180 to get her hair and nails done. She also took her kids shopping and got them new outfits and toys. So she blew the whole 10 grand, basically. And this goes on. Um, this goes on to explain that the majority of people in the program, they may not have been as lavish as this, but they basically blew the money. Who's surprised? Who's surprised about that? And the reason that this rings a bell with me in particular is because one of the many hats that I've worn is assisting with doing taxes. And this was a long time ago. Low income people, you know how like you got no money, you go to the library and somebody helps you with basic taxes as long as it's not anything complicated. I did something like that for a little bit, for a heartbeat, a million years ago. Now, these people that are low income, they get a lot from the federal government at tax season through EIC, the Earned Income Credit Program. The EIC program, which is not part of the IRS, but they use the IRS as a jumping off point. So the IRS determines for EIC whether or not someone's eligible and for how much. Okay. And the EIC is a separate tax funded program. So it's not a tax refund. Understand that if you've never gotten earned income credit in the United States. Okay. These checks are massive. All right. You worked part time somewhere last year and collected welfare or SSI or something, and you've got 4 kids, and your actual earned income is like $6,000-7,000. Your EIC check's going to be like 4 or 5 grand. It's huge. Plus, you're going to get back all your federal tax money. Anything you paid into federal that you while you were actually working, if you had a job, and you can get EIC and not worked one day, by the way, you're going to get all that federal money back too. Big checks. And the idea behind these EIC checks is it's supposed to help people catch up. This is the idea behind the program, okay? And so you get your EIC check and you're supposed to sit there. You're supposed to sit there, and this is the ideal situation. Oh, good, I can pay my debt off. I can catch up my car payments. I can catch up my mortgage. I can eliminate my credit card debt. Something designed to help you take a step forward, which is not how it's used. Because all I would hear from these people, oh, I'm going to hit the casino. Oh, I'm going to buy me a big TV set. Oh, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to spend it on that. No inkling whatsoever to fix debt, to pay things off, or anything like that. As soon as that check's coming, they want to blow it. Because and I can't remember who it was. It was an economist I saw in an interview once. He said there's a mentality that a lot of people who are poor have. And the reason that they are poor is because they have a mindset that does not appreciate money, bills, debt, or anything like it. So if they get money, they just burn it. And all you have to do is look at any lottery winners to see that. And he's kind of right. Let me catch up on some of the comments because I'm sure I'm way behind on comments. Doc says they're buying votes election year, talking about Biden there, I guess. Urban says sounds like the type of program Tiffany Henyard would approve of. Tiffany Henyard, I don't have it pulled up now because of all the rigmarole under investigation by the FBI. That was announced this morning. Monkey says no strings attached. That means no strings attached until the IRS asks for where they got that extra money. If it's granted from the state, they don't have to declare it. A welfare check, you don't have to declare that in taxes. SSI, SRS check, even VA benefits checks, you don't have to declare it at all because it's like they can't tax their own tax dollars that they gave to you. So no strings attached means that it was a state generated check that even EIC, you don't have to declare it. So that's no strings attached. It's literally no strings attached. And Puck says another redistribution of wealth from the haves to the have-nots. And you see how well that worked out. And Cowboy said misdirection equals misappropriation. Cruising says, why is it always single mothers and never single fathers? Single fathers don't count. You're a man. Gird those loins and suck it up, Jack. You're only oppressed if you're female. If you've ever been to family court, you understand. Nature Nerd says Ukraine is looting as they just lost 2 cities by Donbass after months of fighting and have to conserve ammo. Russia's firing 10,000 shells a day, whereas Ukraine only has 2,000 shells a day. And MGTOW is making fun. Cowboy says nails done, hair did. Yeah, that woman spends more than that on her nails and hair every week at her kids' expense, I'm sure. Urban says some people are poor for a very good reason. Puck says shock, I tell you, shocked. Cowboy says it's a scam. Gary Edwards says a fool and her money are soon parted. That's pretty much it. Nature Nerd says they heard the closer you are to zero on your taxes, the better, since refund checks are really just overpaying the government all year in the first place. Yeah, to a point. There's absolute zero is lower than if you contributed a little bit. There's some play there between how many kids, how many dependents you have, because it could be an elderly dependent also who's not working, and their SSI or Social Security benefits don't count. They cannot be put on taxes. There's a little play there between how much is too much, but zero is not as good as, say, 4, 5, 6,000, especially if you have dependents. So you could make the argument a lot of these people work just enough to bust that big check from the government. You can play with that and just work just enough to get the most out of the EIC. Brian says the lottery winners are soon back to working 2 jobs. Yeah, all you have to do is watch how the lottery ruined my life. I think that's a show, correct? Cowboy says 95% of lottery winners are broke within 2 years, confirmed by various university studies, because they don't know how to put it away, man. Don't mess with that money. Pay off whatever you got to pay off and put that away. That's the smart thing, but they don't appreciate it, and they go crazy and they blow it, and then they're screwed. Gary Edwards says some people are grasshoppers who live entirely in the present moment, which is not thrifty. Only, unfortunately, once upon a time, as in the Aesop's fable, when the grasshopper came begging to the ants told him to take a walk. Stay out there and freeze, buddy. You didn't contribute. But nowadays, the ants are forced to help that grasshopper. Monkey says District of Columbia isn't a state, so why would the mayor's program be considered federal, or how does that work? I'm not sure how that ties in, because it's not technically a state. but there's got to be some kind of a county guideline. I'd have to look that up, but it is money. She is the mayor of the District of Columbia. It is city money, county money, however it's zoned, and it would count as the city or county paying them. It's not directly federal, but you get the idea. I hope I explain that right. And Nature Nerd says if you have multiple jobs, you need to make sure you to withhold money to guess your taxes at the end of the year. It's a mess. It's basically a mess. But why don't we jump to New York? Why don't we jump out of the District of Columbia into New York? Here's something you might get a kick out of. This is getting slammed in the media recently, even though this program is about 2 years old. Eyewitness News 7 local New York channel. It's more local news. Members of the New York Police Department's dance team are busting moves instead of crooks while off duty. So here we go. From busting crooks to busting moves, a group of New York police officers are trading their badges while walking the beat for rhythm and choreography while off duty. Okay. If I can get rid of that ad. They are the New York Police Department's dance team. Make no mistake, like police work, this is not all fun and games. It's a commitment with a rigorous schedule. They practice 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hours, and that's after coming off a grueling shift patrolling streets. It could be the longest, hardest day at work. I come here, the girls are always smiling, and it's just nice, says one of the officers. Dance team formed in 2022. The New York Police Department has about 4 dozen competitive groups, and it's more than just a football club and a boxing team. There's even a chess club and a knitting group. So why a dance team? All right. I think this is a clip. Is this a clip of the dance team?
You see, we have Dancing with the Stars.
There
It
you
turns
go.
out, though, the NYPD has something similar. Dancing with the Cops. Police officers who take to the dance floor as a team, searching for healthy exercise and a way to deal with stress.
Some of those are some pretty hefty looking girls. They could use some healthy exercise. So why is this in the news recently? Why are they talking about it now if it's been on for 2 years?
The intense stress that can drown a cop on the job. Here's Stefan Kim.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, and 7, 8.
From busting crooks
2, 4, 5.
to busting moves, they are New York City police officers trading their badges while walking the beat for rhythm and choreography when off duty.
That's some pretty sloppy choreography. Anyways, why is this in the news suddenly? Because Mayor Brandon Johnson is slashing funding and programs left and right. This is fully funded. All of these groups, the knitting and sewing circles, the chess group, this dance troupe, one of 4 dance troupes in the New York Police Department, are all tax dollar programs. And so the argument is, you want to fire police officers, you want to fire EMT workers, you want to fire sanitation, you want to fire water and sewage, you want to fire firemen. You want to cut all these programs. You want to remove police from the schools. You want to cut funding to the schools to help with the migrant crisis. Oh, but tax money going to the dance team? No problem. No problems there. Oh my God. And Lieutenant Raltier, is it Raltier? This is just a parody of Japan's police dance teams. They're the ones in Japan can probably actually dance, though. Cowboy says most people don't save. No, they don't. They live check by check. Dragon said between the crooked judge and out of control crime, New York doesn't need a dance team. They need Batman. That would be nice. Puck says some of those broads are too fat to walk a beat. They don't walk the beat. They ride in the car. Nature Nerd says if DC isn't a state but has 3 election delegates. Why doesn't Puerto Rico have any representation in elections? Why do illegal immigrants get to vote, but U.S. terrorists like Guam in America and Samoa can't? Oh, U.S. territories, excuse me. U.S. territories, including Puerto Rico, never voted for statehood, and it keeps them from that. That's why. Gary Edwards says liberal policies is a real nutcracker. But anyway, yeah, that's why Hawaii gets represented, because they voted to become an actual state. Puerto Rico doesn't want the statehood, but that also keeps them from certain things, as an example. But yeah, the Samoan Islands, all of those places, that's why they're still considered U.S. territories. And Lieutenant Raltier says, have fun in America. Yeah, no kidding. Having fun. Monkey says, I'll give them this, though. At least they're getting exercise. It's probably the only exercise they get, aside from like polishing a seat with their ass all day. And Urban says they should do a collaboration with the pro-vax mass zombie TikTok nurses. Oh my God, yeah. If that doesn't make you sick enough. Anyway, yeah, some of them look like they're in okay shape. Some of them are pretty much heavyweights. Although, you know, a body type can fool you sometimes, to be fair. If you ever watch, my wife and I watch Strongman, and they show the strong women's competition sometimes. And some of the women, you could tell, wow, they're really fit. But every once in a while, you get one that's really sloppy, that looks like she should be asleep in a lawn chair in front of a trailer park. But she's a strong woman. So they could fool you based on the body type, but dancers, they are not. And Helter says they're diverse, and that's all that matters. There you go. There you go. That's how it is. And Doc said the New York Police Department basket weaving and typewriter maintenance teams. Probably. Basket weaving. They should have a merit badge. That's what they should do. And I see we're joined by Zane here today. Zane popped in. But that is the problem in New York. That's the problem in New York, and it's come into question now. And of all people, the one who started it, AOC. AOC is the one who posed the question on her X account, X, aka Twitter. Why are we funding dance teams and knitting circles, but you want to fire police? You want to lay them off to pay for migrants. It's the most logical thing I've ever heard her say. But now it's blown up in the media because of that. And Brian says, to be fair, a lot of fat people are pretty strong. It depends. Some are not. And many that are, the cardio's not good enough for them to keep it up. So it depends. There's certain balances there, Brian. It can alter. It can alter. Jumping to an article from State of the Union. This is interesting. Talking about a Harvard professor. Harvard professor told not to publish study on racial bias. And that's the professor, economist Roland Fryer, facing backlash for publishing research that contradicted the narrative of racial bias in police shootings. Despite finding no evidence of racial bias in shootings, Fryer faced severe criticism and threats requiring police protection. Quote, on non-lethal use of force, Blacks and Hispanics are more than 50% more likely to experience some form of force in interactions with police, the report states. On the most extreme use of force, officer-involved shootings, for example, we find no racial differences in either the raw data or when contextual factors are taken into account. Quote, I collected a lot of data. We collected millions of observations on everyday use of force that was not lethal. And it was in this moment, 2016, that I realized people lose their minds when they don't like the results, Fryer said. So, what my paper showed was that yes, we saw some bias in the low level use of force, every day pushing up against cars, things like that. People seemed to like that result, he said. But we didn't find any racial bias in police shootings. Now, that was really surprising to me because I expected to see it. When I found this surprising result, I hired 8 fresh ones and redid it to make sure. Fryer said they came up with the same exact answer, and I thought it was robust. And when I went to give it, and my God, all hell broke loose. It was 104 page dense academic economics paper with a 150-page appendix. Okay, he said. It was posted for 4 minutes when I got my first email. This is full of expletive responses, and it doesn't make any sense. And I wrote back, how did you read it that fast? That's amazing. You're a genius. And I had colleagues take me to the side and say, don't publish this. You'll ruin your career. And I said, what are you talking about? What's wrong with it? Colleagues told Fryer, the issue is they don't fit together. We like the first one, but you shouldn't publish the second one another time. And I said, let me ask this. If the second part about the police shootings, this is a literal conversation, I said to them, if the second part showed bias, do you think I should publish it then? And they said, yes, then it would make sense. Basically, he did an in-depth study, had it rechecked by 8 independent sources, a 104-page study with 150 additional pages of bibliography. A 104-page study where he said in light incidences, you can assume some bias without saying why. It could be that perhaps Black and Hispanic people who are confronted by police react in a more aggressive fashion and get more volatile, and so the cop has to be more physical. That could be a reason. Just speculating for the sake of argument here. Okay, but when it comes to violent confrontations, the data could not show that there was a bias towards Black or Hispanic individuals. He publishes his paper, and his colleagues in the college tell him not to. Publish the first part that shows bias or a possible bias, but don't publish the second part or it's going to cost you your career. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Monkey says, rare good statement from AOC. Yeah, savor it while you can. Savor it while you can. Nature Nerd says Israel successfully lowered their government debt by shrinking the government and privatizing government functions. Now Argentina is trying that, and America should follow if we want to shrink the debt. If we want to shrink debt, all we need to do is stop spending so frivolously. We have no control over how our tax dollars are spent. And I've made the argument many times that I'm willing to bet that if it wasn't misused and misappropriated and mishandled, they wouldn't need to collect half the taxes that they do. But they throw it all over the place and they spend it blatantly. They're frivolous with our tax dollars. It's not their money. Why the hell should they care, right? If they were more responsible with it, they wouldn't need as much and there wouldn't be as much debt. Doc says they have cops in Indiana in their hometown that go to the gym and lift before the shift. The guys are huge. They aren't paid to do it, but they need the strength for the job. When I lived in Topeka, the police that were in the best physical condition were the cycle cops. There's a lot of police on bicycles in Topeka, and they're in pretty decent shape. Zane says in the 1800s, they didn't have welfare for immigrants and a smaller population. They didn't have welfare, period. And Take America said roid rage cops. And T. Keynes here, he says cops killed a gay TV host and boyfriend all over the news here in Australia. I did not hear that. I did not hear that. Puck says, of course, he didn't support the narrative by admitting his findings. And Cowboy said, I thought more white people are shot by police than blacks. Yes, I believe that is correct. But what he was trying to determine was, I guess he was trying to determine if more extremely violent or lethal force is used with blacks and Hispanics than with white people, or if it's required more often. And he couldn't find that. His determination showed that that was not true, but it doesn't fit the modern narrative. So Harvard told him to hang it up. They didn't want to hear it. Helter says the Harvard professors aren't interested in actual facts, only apparent facts that they defined, pretty much. Gary says, speaking of systemic racism, try using AI to generate images of white men. It won't let you, not even historical images. Really? I haven't toyed around with, I don't know anything about that. Creating images with AI, I haven't messed with it at all, so I'm not sure. But if that's true, that'd be very interesting. Urban says, follow the science right down into Marx's grave. Marx was a bum. Karl Marx was a bum. He never worked a day in his life, and he lived off the charity of all of his rich friends. Seriously. Dragon says academia is no longer about truth seeking. There's stronger social pressure to only publish studies that affirm pet theories. Publishing studies like this don't confirm what people want to hear or what they want you to hear, because I don't know that the average person wants to hear spin like this. I don't think so. I think that majority people in the media, activists, politicians want to hear this, and that's what's being pandered to. But if you push it long enough and hard enough, then people will believe it. People will start to believe it. Cowboy says they think all the sensationalism creates more racism. Yes, it does. It also gets people against each other. If you're spinning a narrative that's just not true, like the idea behind cultural misappropriation. Apparently, only black people ever braided hair. All cultures have braided hair, but it's cultural misappropriation for a Caucasian descent female to braid her hair. And you're going to claim cultural misappropriation based on that and get in her face about it. You're going to make her dislike you, and you'll create a problem that way. Nature Nerd says if Congress had their act together, two or three U.S. territories could become states, it would definitely be a big boost in the U.S. And Puck says AOC misspoke like she did when Alex Stein was talking about her Latina booty. Oh, my God. Well, there we go. And Brian says more unarmed whites were killed by cops than unarmed blacks by cops in 2019. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's accurate. But that Harvard professor was told to shut his mouth or lose his career. And now he's speaking out about it. I guess he was too scared to speak out about it then, or maybe he got tired of biting his tongue. Maybe he got sick of it. Maybe he figured it's time to take a stand. And I'm glad he did. Because people need to hear it. Not that too many people will hear it, by the way, unfortunately. But with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, you are watching and or listening to Coffee Talk. So you can find me, please do, on YouTube at Coffee Talk Live or at Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting on both channels Monday through Friday for the live portion. Please do subscribe there if you have not. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, if you are so inclined, at Coffee Talk Chat. And of course, Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. So there we are. Thanks for joining us, everybody. There's Miss Kitty. She's waking up. For those of you who can see, how you doing, darling? She'll be all right. Miss Kitty, everybody. So again, thanks to everybody who was able to join us here today. As always, I hope you got something out of the conversation. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. And I guess I will be seeing you again on Monday.